This story is about a girl who has the misfortune to be born into a family where she is not only unloved, but plans to give her away for a lot of money as soon as she reaches a certain age. Her parents have not hidden from her for a single day how they really treat her. The girl is nothing more than an empty place in this house. They don't even heat her room and treat her like a servant. She hates every other day, and the only good thing she has in her life is sleep. But even that lasts less than she would like, all because she has to get up earlier than everyone else, cook, clean the house, and wash clothes. Like today, her mom woke up earlier than usual and is already unhappy that nothing's ready yet. It was just getting light outside, and she expected to see full order, a huge variety of food and more. The woman not only showed her displeasure, but also, as usual, began to intimidate her daughter, claiming that if the girl were someone's wife, she would have been beaten and punished for her laziness long ago. While the whole family gathers for breakfast, Lily barely has time to set the table, to make a beautiful presentation of the dishes, even though there will only be leftovers herself. In the meantime, the relatives had just one excuse for not having food on the table yet, and they immediately started looking for options on who to give it to as soon as possible. They don't try to choose candidates. It's enough for her mother that her daughter won't starve to death, and that's enough. I can't believe they're so brave to talk about it. And Lily listens to all this and tries to please every one of them. There is only one beloved daughter in this family, and the second one feels superfluous from the first day of her birth. She has never heard a good word in her life, and she is doomed to marry a man she doesn't love. Who would have thought that the people closest to them, the parents, could hate their child so much and deliberately try to ruin his life? She is in an absolutely desperate situation. She can't go out anywhere, and if she ever objects to any of them, she will find herself on the street without a penny in her pocket. And while the brother and sister do not need anything, they only need to ask for something. The parents are ready to take huge debts to make the children happy. One day, when it was Lily's birthday, the whole family went on vacation to the sea, and she was ordered to put the house in order and guard it until they returned. It's amazing how she remains such a kind person and hasn't even tried to run away. She has so much time to think things over and create a plan. The girl is just too afraid of being caught, and life will be a living hell, though it's hard to imagine how much worse it could get. She washes her clothes every day in the icy water by the river and has no right to get sick. Her mother punishes her for doing the impossible for it. If Lily gets the slightest hint that she's in pain, she's left without food or warm clothes for the next few days. Her mom's so well positioned, she has no idea how real her assignments are. Her daughter doesn't have a second to spare, and she picks on every little thing. She herself has never done so much work in her life, and she can't stand it when she sees Lily doing nothing. Sometimes she even has to pretend to be busy with something, because there is no other way. Meanwhile, she's washing the last of her t-shirts, and suddenly she remembers that today is the day she's been dreading all year. It's her birthday today, and if Ronichi finds out she's 20, he'll make her marry Michael for sure. Time is too short. Her hands begin to tremble, her heart rate increases, and she fears that her life could get worse at any moment. Usually other girls in such situations run away from home, move to another city, and do everything to avoid being found. Some even change their appearance or try to do something, but don't let others control their lives. Lily has too soft character. The girl used to please her parents, but still decided to do this deed and did not sit idly by. This is her last chance to escape to a happy life, or at least one that will be a little better than her current one. I guess whatever happens to her outside the house, it will definitely be better than here. First, you need to save as much money as possible in a short time. In her case, it's almost impossible. They give too little, and often don't give money back for the groceries they have to buy when everyone is busy and can't go to the market. Lily decides to go the other way for some reason and accidentally meets a man who is sitting on the floor and clearly needs something. He was sad and upset, and of course the lady couldn't pass by. She's a very kind person and thought that at least she should find out if he was all right and maybe she could help him in some way. At some point, the girl accidentally remembers that she's seen him with the loot before, and it's strange that today he's without anything, and he's in no hurry to go home. Judging by the red stains on his clothes, it was clear he had barely escaped the beast and was most likely insanely hungry. He doesn't even have the strength to look her in the eye. His heavy sigh speaks for itself, and of course Lily isn't going to leave him in the lurch. She offered him a piece of bread, warned him that it was absolutely free, and until he ate a piece, she wasn't going anywhere from him. The man immediately looked at her. It looked a little scary at first, though if you think about it, a cute look would be too weird to expect from him. He has very beautiful golden eyes that have been hidden behind bangs and a bad mood all this time. He was happy to eat, though he couldn't imagine any passerby paying attention to him at all. Everyone around him is in a hurry to get somewhere, and he often doesn't care about other people's problems because he has enough of his own. Lily made sure he ate everything and ran straight home. She forgot to buy another bread and quickly regretted it. The woman counts what her daughter buys every time, and that's what happens if one item is missing. She is not allowed to eat anything on the way, take it into the room. All food is controlled, and strangely enough, only in relation to her. The daughter told me that she shared one bread with a person who was starving on the street, and in any case, she bought it all with her own money and does not have to account for it. The girl had inadvertently allowed herself to say too much and ended up losing her dinner. She had last eaten about 3 days ago, and to hear such a thing was too much. Nothing new. Her body had long since adapted to such an ordeal, though if she was still being punished, she could have eaten another bread on the way. That way she wouldn't have to starve at least. Lily began to apologize, but to her mother it is just an empty sound, some time ago. The woman even ordered to talk less. So much she disliked the voice of her own daughter. As she went up to her room, the woman said that she had already sent a letter to Mikhail, which meant that soon they would finally be rid of her. The mom warned the girl to treat them well after the wedding, and if she forgot about her parents, supposedly she would regret it very much. Except that it usually works in cases when parents help their children, make them happy, and not make life hell, after which it is no longer scary even to stay on the street or to be alone in a foreign city. After this conversation, the thoughts of escape only became more. The girl sits on the cold floor, not even able to reach the bed, and wondered how she would survive in the forest and how possible that would be. She is not going to get married. It is better to survive in terrible conditions, although in any case, even in the forest will be more comfortable and safer than in this house. And if you are lucky, you can get to another village and find friends. She's got less than a couple days left, and the sooner Lily's out, the less chance of some man taking her into his home. Finally, she decided to rest a little, and thinking it might be possible to escape an hour before it began to get light outside, nothing portended trouble, when suddenly Lily felt something wrong and woke up immediately. She had never felt this way before. It was cold, but not that cold. In the hallway, she hears some strange sound and notices that the lock is on the floor, though she was sure to lock it as usual. A draft could hardly have opened the lock, and to throw it to the floor was frightening, for there was obviously someone behind the door. The girl didn't get out of bed. She made up her mind and asked who was there. She expected to see anyone but him. It could have been helpers or animals, but as soon as this man's foot stepped and appeared from behind the door, she just couldn't believe her eyes. The brother deliberately waited until the parents were definitely asleep, quietly walked across the hall, and while the sister was still unmarried, decided to do the most despicable thing she didn't expect him to do. He called it a so-called farewell and admitted that he wanted to do it a long time ago, but it was never the right time, and now it's his last chance. It's just unbelievable, and what's worse, if Lily starts screaming or calling for help, she's just ignored, and she's very aware of that. This man is even worse than his parents. He behaves so vile it's impossible to describe in words. Starts promising that it'll be quick. She won't notice, and explaining how much it means to him sounds disgusting. The girl is no longer in control of her emotions. Her tears are flowing, and it seems that the situation is absolutely hopeless. She is much weaker than him, and now he can do whatever he wants to do. She casually remembers for a small wooden toy in the shape of a bear, and realizes she would never have done it in any other situation. But now she just has to. She very discreetly grabs it and in the same second hits this. It's hard to even say, man, right on the head. He passed out immediately. Lily got out and got out of bed. She still hadn't realized what had just happened, and it was probably just another sign to get out of here and fast. The girl has been the kindest person all her life, thinking about others, doing everything for them, even to her own detriment. But now it's time to do things differently. Her life directly depends on it. She shouldn't care now whether he's dead or not. What happens to him now? She should take all her things and run away from here, wherever the hell she is. This man doesn't deserve a second of her attention and worry. He's shown for what he really is, and now there's nothing to even think about. If you think back to her life before, it's nothing even compares to this. She's so scared she can't even move. It's important to remember that Michael could come to them as early as the morning. She has only hours left, and this is not the time to feel sorry for anyone. It's time to learn to judge people by their actions and disregard the kindness that has made it worse more than once. If the brother survives, he'll make up anything, as long as no one finds out about it and the sister is punished. If the girl tries to explain anything, no one will believe her anyway. It's impossible to believe, but she's made her final decision. She's not going to let him live, and once she's sure he's not breathing, she's out of here once and for all. The girl takes a pillow, leaves him breathless, because she's heard somewhere it's supposed to work. She does it and can't believe she's been brought to this. Lily's doing the right thing, but she needs to be quick. There's a chance that Mom will wake up early, start controlling everything, and see what's going on here. She's been looking forward to this day more than anyone, and she's not going to let anything go wrong, so she needs to hurry up. Unexpectedly. But she starts to smile, as if she realizes that she's doing the right thing by deciding to do this, so it'll be easier to act now. The main thing is that once you realize that she destroyed a man and her own brother, don't blame yourself and remember that she had no other choice. It's not going to be easy for a kind person like her. It's fate, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's the way it was, is, and will be. At the very last moment, when it's really time to leave, the girl realizes that he doesn't have any outer clothes. She doesn't want to go outside, because it's cold even here in the room. In addition to being the only room that is not heated in the whole house, the window cannot be repaired. There is a crack in it, which makes it as cold as it is outside. And on the other hand, if she's already used to living in these conditions and can even sleep here, maybe it won't be so bad outside, especially since there are plenty of kind people on the street. If you ask someone for help, there's a chance someone will take her in and let her sleep over for a while. Lily took herself in hand. She had already put on her shoes, dressed as warmly as her closet would allow, and was already making her way down to the first floor. And the girl hadn't noticed the stairs creaking before. But there's nothing to be done. There's no way to get out through the window. 3 minutes and she's out on the street like everything's going according to plan, no one's seen her, and that's a good thing. The only thing left to do is to go somewhere far away, hide in the woods and hope she doesn't get attacked by some animal. Lily goes, and even from the realization that she just took a man's life, she feels sorry for others as usual and forgets about herself. All those images of her pressing him down with a pillow, seeing red stains all over the bed, she can't get over it. It's a shame that in order to live a normal life, or at least to have any chance at it, you have to suffer so much and go to such measures. Someone gets a happy life from the first day of birth, and Lily has not even learned what parental love is. For her, it is something non-existent and fantastic. Just as she began to remember how often she'd tried to earn a little love, she happened to notice footprints in the snow, raised her head a little higher, and saw someone's cozy little house in the distance, where there was light and most likely warmth. I wonder who lives there, and if it would be dangerous to go any closer. It all depends on how cold she is, and how long she's willing to go any further. The girl realized that she was so cold she couldn't feel it anymore, so she'd have to take a chance and ask to warm up with her host for at least a few minutes. Seemingly elementary conditions that should be in every home, but for her it seems like some kind of luxury, and because of that it is so scary to ask to share it. She was already halfway through and saw that there were surprisingly no footprints around the house, indicating that it hadn't been vacated in a while. Lucky if there was a family living there, but it could be anyone, really. A cabin in the middle of nowhere doesn't look like a family cabin at all. It's more like a hunter or people who like to travel and decided to stay here for a while. Lily came closer, knocked, but no one opened, so she was brave enough to go in without permission. It's very strange, but it's empty, and there's no one here at all. But since it's more or less warm and the lights are on, perhaps the owner is somewhere near and may come back very soon. The girl was so tired she didn't even want to look into it. She resigned herself to the fact that it would be a bit ugly on her part and hoped for that man's understanding. She lay down on the hay, a little hard, but better than nothing. At least here it was warm and the wind wasn't blowing. Just a month ago, the lady never thought that her life would present her with nothing but challenges. This day has been so eventful that she could fall asleep at any moment. It was worth it just to close her eyes for 1 second as someone approached the house. She looks towards the door and realizes that things are about to get either really bad or she's going to get lucky and be allowed to stay. The girl was so frightened that she thought it might be her father or any other man who had been sent for her. Lily shut down. She wouldn't even look in his direction. She's already ready for anything, and two doesn't faint. One would have thought that as soon as the landlord saw the stranger in his house, he would throw her out at once. But he stopped and began to wonder who it was that was. He's absolutely calm, trying not to scare her, because he knows what a girl might think when she sees a man like him in front of her. Lily thought it wouldn't hurt to explain everything. She opened her eyes and started to apologize. It would be more proper that way. She said she wasn't a thief. She just wanted to rest at least until morning, all because she'd left home and there was no one she knew to stay with. The man didn't hear her and misunderstood her a bit. He thought the girl was lost and offered his help. The fact that he hadn't started yelling at her and she was still here was incredibly reassuring. I guess appearances can be deceiving after all. Lily said a few phrases to him, and only then remembered that she had seen him somewhere before. Started to look closely and couldn't believe her eyes. It's the same man she helped yesterday morning. It's definitely him, and she has no doubt about it. A surprising encounter, but it seems that he did not recognize her yet. The girl calmed down, for he would not hurt her, and perhaps even return her kindness in kind. She apologized again for having to bother him, and promised that if she could, she wouldn't be here tomorrow morning. The girl's stomach rumbled violently and the man realized he had to keep her. She clearly hadn't eaten in a while and was very tired. He looked at her for a few seconds and thought, why not check to see how bad it was? He takes her hand and immediately realizes how weak her body is. She needs something to eat, which he's going to do, and in the meantime, gave me a blanket to keep me warm and stop shivering like I'd been on ice for days. At first, Lily hoped he wouldn't hurt her, but now she can't believe she's so lucky, and the owner of this house is someone she knows. Hours had passed. It was morning outside. The man had melted the stove and began to insist that the guest was in no hurry to go anywhere. It was very nice. The owner is trying and most likely won't even ask for anything in return. It was awkward at first, but then I thought that if I were him, I would have done the same, especially since she wouldn't be here for long, at least not for the time being. And then he turns around and asks to come closer, because it must be much warmer and better by the stove. It was a little weird when she started to slowly approach. He asked to do it faster, as if he wasn't happy, but she tried to ignore it. He has a cold and indifferent look, though it would be wrong to demand anything else. He owes her nothing, and being at home, he has a right to behave as he pleases. She herself is no different, Everyone has their own problems, and that's normal. It would be weird to expect some fun or something like that. Either way, she's grateful for everything he's done for her. She could have frozen and passed out on the street a long time ago. He'll probably still try to get some food, since he's a hunter himself, and has been hungry for a long time as well. Lily put her hand to the fire and felt a warmth that seemed like something incredible. It was unusual for her to be at home and not shaking from the cold. She got her first good night's sleep. No matter how it sounded, it was the best, calmest, and safest night of her life. The girl regretted that she hadn't decided to run away from home much earlier, and even if someone came after her now, her new friend would definitely be able to protect her and wouldn't give her any offense. She hasn't told him the whole story yet, but it's clear enough from her that she's been through quite a bit. She's so surprised at the care and warmth that speaks for itself. She doesn't even move away from that fire, trying to maximize her enjoyment, and didn't even notice the man go somewhere else. She stopped following him, thinking about her own problems, because sooner or later, she'd have to leave here anyway. Her life used to feel like a precipice, and now she'll do anything and everything possible not to go back to that hell. Meanwhile, the master of the house had already managed to do all his business, but for some reason, for food he never says anything. He doesn't have to feed her, but Lily only thinks about it and wouldn't mind it. And even though he knows it's time to move on, he's still afraid to hear even a hint that it's time to leave. The girl is so used to good things that she doesn't even know how to go out in that cold and walk at least half a kilometer now. Anyway, she's much better today, and he did what he could. He has his own things to do, and it would be wrong to take advantage of his hospitality for too long. Yesterday, she wanted to warm up for half an hour, but stayed much longer. The man looks and realizes that this way she can definitely make it down to the bottom of the mountain, and at least she won't pass out for at least another half day. He starts to open the doors, doesn't say anything, looks a little weird, but she really has to go. I wonder what that could mean. If he said anything, that's one thing, but he's silent and like he wants to kick me out and finally be alone. Lily looks at the snow and would do anything to stay here one more day, just one more day. It is lucky that the weather is sunny today. The wind is not as strong as yesterday, and it is safe to go on the road. The girl had warmed up, had a little snack, and it wouldn't be right to take advantage of his kindness today either. Just as the step came, the wind began to blow so hard that it was even hard to walk, as if it were stopping her and hinting that it would be better to stay and not go too far away. It's scary to imagine what might happen if the wind picked up and blew her off her feet in some snowy field or worse, down a big mountain. Lily gave up and made up a cover story like she'd twisted her leg badly and didn't know how long she could stay outdoors. Started pretending it was too hard to walk, hinting that he'd let her stay a little longer. She didn't want to be so brazen, but fear had overcome her, and now she'd have to take advantage of his kindness until at least tomorrow night. You can see that the man is not very happy about it. He doesn't hide it, but still, he won't allow himself to refuse her. The man purposely made sure she understood everything and didn't think he would let her stay any longer than necessary. He warned her that as soon as her leg stopped hurting, there'd be nothing more for her to do here. Not because he's so mean and doesn't want her around, but because he's gotten used to being alone for so many years. And while she's here, he's not used to it. Not to get too cocky, Lily promised to do all the housework, cooking, laundry, and order. He thought it was a good idea. He had just accumulated a lot of dust, dirty clothes, and cooking wasn't much fun either. And tomorrow night he'll be alone, with food, clean clothes, and order. The girl knows that no man can be in a good mood if he hasn't eaten a good meal. This she took care of as soon as they agreed on everything. There wasn't much food at home, but she found everything she needed and made a good soup. It's very rich, hearty, and smells good too. The master visibly got better. He hadn't expected this from her and was sure it was all empty promises, but she kept her word and really surprised him. He himself can't cook something complicated and hasn't eaten anything like this in a long time. Lily was happy to prepare this dish, and I'm sure he will definitely like it. It can't be tasteless. The smell is all over the house, but it's a pity that there was only enough food for one portion. She didn't get anything, but the girl doesn't talk about it, and if he asks, she'll say she had a snack while she was cooking. In the meantime, he has already eaten all of his portion. So much strength has appeared that in an hour the owner returns home with the booty and is surprised that before he could hardly force himself to go outside. It's been a long time since he's enjoyed it, and also, he offered to make some delicious dinner for two with it. There's enough food. Lily already knows what she's going to do, and she suggested he rest and wait just a few hours. This time, he brought not only the prey, but also various vegetables and other foods to make a full meal, and maybe enough for days to come. It was much more enjoyable to cook this time around. She knows exactly what she's going to eat for dinner, and that's beyond satisfying. You don't have to lie that everything's fine. And at some point, the girl forgets to pretend she's got a leg problem. She lifts the heavy bucket, and just in time remembers that it looks suspicious. The man didn't have time to look at her, but she immediately let him go and got back into character. The food was in the oven. She had a moment to spare, and just as she turned in his direction, he began to change his clothes. It was the first time the girl had seen such a strong and sturdy body. Though it was not surprising, to live under such conditions, one could not be weak. After such a spectacle, she immediately forgets that nothing heavy should be lifted and lifts a bucket. But fortunately, the man did not notice it. He just asked her not to strain herself and said that he would do it himself. She could fit herself into that huge bucket. There was no way he could let her carry such a heavy load when he was near her. It was the first and only time in her life, other than yesterday, when someone helped and she didn't ask for it. He went outside without clothes, and Lily doesn't understand how he isn't cold, for she herself is chilly even here. It's been a few hours, the food is ready, very hot, and looks even better than it did in the morning. The flavor is amazing, and of course I can't wait to try this out. The girl put the pot on the table, but for some reason brought one plate, even though he himself had said that this level would be for the two of them. The man doesn't understand why she doesn't sit at the table, because she hasn't eaten anything since morning, and she should eat at least something. He never once forbade her to eat anything. And as it turned out, it was because she was very unaccustomed to sitting down at the table, especially if there was already someone sitting there. Used to get very angry and punished if she sat down with the whole family and picked up a spoon. The girl can't even remember the last time she ate a meal with someone, not on a cold floor, but at a normal table, like all other people. Lily knew she wasn't a bad cook, but she didn't think this time the soup would turn out so beautifully that it was impossible to stop herself. With so many healthy vitamins to keep you full for a long time, this dish is perfect for lunch or even a cold winter evening meal. She has had a sense of obligation from day one, which makes her unable to afford to eat more than a few spoonfuls. The owner doesn't want to hear a word that she is full. He won't believe it anymore and demands to eat at least one portion. Tomorrow she should have the strength to go out, because he won't let her stay longer than that. Everyone knows that in winter you need to eat much more than at other times of the year, especially since it will soon spend so much energy that extra calories will not hurt. She should think about it herself and not be afraid to eat more than she's used to. It's her health that should be the first thing to think about. Lily ate the first portion and saw him start to pour the second one, and he didn't spare any meat. It was very pleasant, but still, it was too much. She's not used to eating such huge portions, especially not at one time. Everything is delicious, but you have to know the measure. The girl ate the second portion and said that it would be enough. If she ate too much, she would have to stay another day, because it would be impossible to stay on her feet for a long time. Your stomach would be so full that you couldn't take a single step, and nobody wants that, especially not him. Surprisingly, she was usually punished for wanting lots of food and is being scolded for not eating enough for the first time. It was so nice that her cheeks even blushed. Even though the man is not the nicest person in this world, he treats her better than her own parents do. From being pretty well fed and sitting right next to the fireplace, her body doesn't shake and she feels great like she's never felt before. The time was nearing evening. The owner of the house was not tired and suddenly decided to change his appearance. He thought, why not remove the beard, which he never touched? He wants to be less intimidating because he's noticed that when he talks to Lily, she's afraid of him and tries not to show it. Even though he is a very kind man, as soon as he looks in her direction, he sees how uncomfortable she is around him. If the physique can't be helped, the beard will be enough too, or rather, the lack of it. I wonder why he suddenly started thinking in that. Is it really okay for her to stay with him for a while longer? And wants to make her feel comfortable. He just stepped into the living room, as Lily immediately noticed his change of heart. He's really young and now the owner is very difficult to call a man. Now he looks like a guy and very handsome. He's looking at her and trying to figure out if she's better or not. Lily doesn't know he did it for her yet, and when she does, she probably won't even believe it. She felt very uncomfortable looking in his direction. He had become very handsome. She never thought that a beard could add so much age to one's appearance. She started to feel shy, averted her gaze, even stepped aside a little, and he misunderstood everything and got very upset. He wanted to make a good impression, but in the end, nothing's changed. She's still wary of him. It's not what he thinks it is. She even had to go outside to be alone, being in the same house with such a handsome man. It's not easy. It's weird how she couldn't see it in him before, and most likely if he had removed the beard earlier, he might have gotten a girlfriend by now. It's a shame he was upset because he really wanted her to like him, and he did. A couple hours later, there was some kind of storm outside. It got dark earlier than it should have, which meant no one would be leaving the house today. The master wanted to go hunting, but I guess we'll have to postpone it until tomorrow. Now it's better to drink warm tea and stay here. The guy was upset. He wanted to bring home some food for his guests to cook something new and have a nice dinner. In the meantime, they had come to the conclusion that there was no telling when the storm would end. They had food, but firewood was best spent wisely. It is necessary to burn less fire. Instead, you will have to use a blanket and be patient for a while. Although it will not be very cold, the walls of the house retain heat and you can do without additional insulation. It turned out that at first she got used to the good conditions, even stopped noticing how warm the house was. But as soon as it got a little colder, she remembered the old house and got a little sad. The only good thing about having a guy around is that he won't leave until the storm passes, and it won't pass for a while. Just the thought of having to leave here soon makes you wish winter would never end, that there would be weather that would make it impossible to walk out the door. She would do anything to stay here forever. She needs nothing but wood, fire, and a roof over her head to be happy, and preferably all of that away from her parents' house. Lily did not notice how she fell asleep on the floor. The guy saw it. He never ceases to be amazed at how she can be satisfied with little and has no idea how it happened. The girl wakes up and says that everything is fine. It's very warm and cozy here, that it was possible to not even wake her up. At that moment, he saw some anxiety in her again and mistakenly thought it was because of him, when in fact, she was just afraid of losing everything she had now. And yet he is not such a cruel man as to let a girl freeze on the floor under one blanket. He took her in his arms without permission, for he himself will sleep on the bed and is not going to look at such a picture. Lily imagined for a second that it was her father who had done it, and unfortunately, she could only imagine or dream such a thing. She has some mixed feelings, and it's no surprise that after all she's been through, she's afraid to leave this house where she got what she needed. If the guy knew her situation, he wouldn't have kicked her out so quickly. But it's her own fault, and she's in no hurry to say anything. He thinks she's fine, just got bored and wanted to escape her parents for a life of freedom. But it's more serious than he can imagine. Even though they don't have anything interesting going on, it's more than enough. She's grateful to not be insulted or treated like nothing. Who would have thought that even here, not in her own home, living with a stranger she doesn't know at all, is more pleasant than where she was born and raised. And that's not all. She has such a serious injury that when she falls asleep, she still feels terribly cold and can't get warm. Even though it's warm at home, she can lie down without a blanket. The guy doesn't even feel bad that he can't make her so cozy that she doesn't shiver. He genuinely doesn't understand why she's so cold and is afraid to imagine what it would be like to be outside with her. Even the walls of the house he's touched more than once are warm enough, and it's not the farthest room to be uncomfortable. She can't get warm for longer than an hour, and he could even open the windows for airing to freshen the air a bit. Even if you look at her skin, you can see how bluish it is. There is no indication that she is in a warm bed, in a warm house, and not outside. And then he gets an idea. The landlord starts to take off his shirt, and suddenly he walks over to her bed. It was harmless at first, but as soon as he woke her up and asked her to undress. That sounded a little strange. He was standing in front of her with nothing on, and no wonder she was having all sorts of thoughts at that moment. The girl does not understand what it is for, because she has already had a vacation, and he has not asked for anything like that before. She starts to ask. And at the same second, she's afraid to hear what she originally thought, even though at the same time, she realizes that it's impossible. He's a decent man and couldn't do that to her. And meanwhile, the guy says she can't maintain her own body temperature and he doesn't want to see her unconscious tomorrow and regret not being able to help her right away. I don't know if he wants to share body temperature, but that can only be done if they cuddle, and there's no other way to do it. Even though there's nothing wrong with it, he's doing it for a good cause. But it's still a little awkward to see a figure like that in front of you and not think about anything extra. Here, her brushes are already reddening. You can see his method is working, even though he hasn't even touched it, just sitting next to her on the bed doing nothing. He begs her not to tell her that he and Moore will have to take her clothes off. Lily understood and did it very quickly. She's got a tank top under her clothes, which she hopes she won't have to take off because that would be too much. As it turned out, it was much simpler than she thought. He just wanted to lie down next to her, warm her with his body and nothing more. The host was very tired and asked not to turn in much so that he could go to sleep quickly and get a good night's sleep. Lily can't believe it's happening to her. She tries not to think about what she's already thought about, and it makes her feel very ashamed. The guy pinned her down hard enough to make sure the girl didn't shiver and say it wasn't helping. Lastly, in order to get a good night's sleep, he still asked if she was better or not, and, according to her, it was much warmer already. Not a few minutes later, she was shivering again, woke him up, and then the thought came to mind that most likely Lily had caught a virus and was sick. She was the only one who could get to sleep. The guy thought that if nothing else worked, he could pet her, and that was all he could do for her. On the one hand, he's trying to warm up, but on the other hand, it looks like he's trying to hint at something. Lily is no longer afraid. She trusts him completely, and even though she is now being touched by someone else's hands, she is not afraid at all. Even the opposite, she's confused and starts to realize she's enjoying it. Although that's not surprising being in bed with such a good-looking guy. And suddenly, he had an unexpected idea to give her a light massage to warm up her body. He was even upset that he hadn't thought of it before because it was so elementary. The longer they are so close, the more he starts to notice good things about her, like how beautiful her figure and soft skin are. The guy has rarely talked to girls and hasn't had any relationships before. You can feel it, especially when he's afraid to push her too hard. The massage had just started and he already had another idea, which unsurprisingly had to come at this very moment. He enjoyed touching her soft skin so much that he wanted something more. Lily had just relaxed and reassured herself that he didn't mean anything by it. And then this happened. The main thing is that he doesn't scare her, and if it happens, it's consensual, no other way. He didn't seem like a man who only thought of himself, and as soon as he saw the doubt in her eyes, he said if she didn't like something, she could say so, and everything would be fine. The girl didn't think for a second. replied that she didn't mind and let him do whatever he wanted. He only had to promise one thing, that he would warm her up in any way he could, and otherwise there were no restrictions. She slowly closed her eyes and thought that now was the moment to trust and enjoy the moment as much as possible, to stop fooling herself and let her feelings come out of her head. Up to this moment, Lily was sure she was very much afraid of all this and would never consent to such a thing with a man she knew little of. But with him, she's not afraid of anything, and she's sure she'll never regret that decision, and it's probably one of the best ways to keep warm, even better than being near a fireplace. A long time ago, when the guy worked as a mercenary, there were too many girls in his entourage who dreamed of being in bed with him. But even then, he didn't want it any more than he did now. Lily attracted him like a magnet, and there was nothing he could do about it. It wasn't even a minute before she was wearing absolutely nothing. And they're warming up quite nicely already. The girl doesn't think about the cold. There's so much atmosphere around that it's not a big deal right now. They don't take their eyes off each other for a second. It gives an incredible feeling they've never experienced before in their lives. Even he, as cold and unapproachable as he had seemed before, became embarrassed and felt a little awkward. He admired her beauty more and more, and thought he didn't want to let her go anywhere. The guy regretted a lot when he wanted to say goodbye on the first day, and is very glad he didn't do it. It's never been this hot in this house before. Even though the temperature's lower, they haven't felt it. His eyes are so crazy the girl looks into them and has no idea what he's capable of or what will happen to her in a few minutes. The two of them begin to savor every touch and wish they had done it sooner. Fate had brought them together, and they were almost separated once and for all. At some point, her body temperature had gotten warm enough. The guy thought that was probably enough, though he really wanted to read her mind, and if she was okay with it, continue on from there. And when it had to be stopped, he couldn't help himself and proceeded to the most important thing of all. Gently took her legs, kissed her, and asked her to relax as much as possible. The guy promised that she would enjoy everything. The main thing was not to be afraid of anything. Lily had never thought it would feel so good. She had never done it before, and if she had known what it felt like, it could have happened much sooner. Her breathing quickens. He hears it and makes it even quicker, stares intently into her eyes, and warns her that it's not over yet. He has no intention of stopping until the wee hours of the morning, and would like her to desire the exact same thing. The guy worries that she might be hurt and constantly asks a lot of questions. He doesn't want to insist, and if she doesn't like something, he'll stop it right away. Everything should happen in the best way possible, without pain and patience. The girl doesn't even know what to say. She just wants to keep going and begs him not to stop. She starts screaming all over the room, which scared him a lot. But then she explained that the opposite is just fine. It means he's doing everything right, and he doesn't have to worry about it. And then he caught himself thinking that he really liked the sounds. He asked her to do that more often. It made him even crazier. The louder she screams and the harder she scratches his back, the better he tries to bring her pleasure and enjoys himself. After a while, he wanted to see her face up close, to lean his ear in and hear how beautifully she was breathing. Sweat droplets appear on their bodies. The bed is soaked, and the cold problem clearly doesn't bother anyone else. And suddenly, at such a seemingly inopportune moment, he remembers that he doesn't even know her name, hasn't asked it before, and thought he could do it right now. Looking strange, but he did. The girl didn't even pay attention to it and immediately introduced herself barely, gathering her thoughts together. In such a state, she could answer any provocative question without even noticing it. She feels so good she has no energy to think about anything. The guy introduces himself, and it turns out his name is Gaydon. It was at that moment, completely by accident, that Lily wondered how they should go on, whether they should leave now, although I guess it was up to him. She won't personally insist on anything, but if Gaydon offers to stay, she'll gladly take him up on his offer. It'll be interesting to talk to him in the morning, though judging by how much he's sped up, it could be done in just a couple minutes. He behaves like a real madman and she likes it very much. The girl feels the power in him and is ready to do it even every day. All in all, they warmed up very quickly. Now they will have no problem going to sleep. Unless, of course, they want to do it again. Everything was fine, but suddenly, he was so caught up in the process that he forgot to stop in time, saw that it was too late, and didn't even know how to tell her about it. He's visibly upset and doesn't even make eye contact, realizing what the consequences might now be and how serious this mistake is. He's very lucky that the girl fell asleep and doesn't quite realize what she's gotten herself into, which lasted so long that she didn't feel anything. Though sooner or later, he'll have to tell her everything. To hide it, it would be too much. He was in a very bad mood because he was the only one who controlled this moment and didn't think it would end like this. Lily fell asleep. He did not bother her, covered her with a blanket, and decided to wait for the next day. There would be time to think and understand how to properly present her this not the most pleasant information. He's trying his best to calm himself down. It's not working out so well. He just realizes that time is of the essence and he needs to take responsibility for his actions. After that, lay down next to her. Realizes he won't be able to sleep again and probably never will. Lily may not realize it, but she's lucky to be with a man who can take responsibility for his actions and doesn't mind taking responsibility if it turns out they have to start a family now. He even thought it might be better. He's at the age where it's time to think about relationships, and he's not at all opposed to considering her as a future girlfriend and mother of his children. His thoughts have gone too far, and now it's morning. There's less and less time left to talk, and he's ready for that. Lily wakes up slowly. She doesn't shiver. She starts to move and slowly opens her eyes. She was even surprised that she was hot and wanted to throw off the blanket. And I forgot I'd fallen asleep in the same bed with him, even though he remembers everything that happened during the night. The girl was sure that when she woke up she would not see him or wait for him after the hunt. But he stayed, and it was very pleasant, as if he showed that he would not leave her and behaved like a real man. To save time, he asked me to get up quickly, it was breakfast time, and hinted that there was something we needed to talk about. She doesn't understand anything and feels how terribly her back hurts. She strained it yesterday, starting in the morning, when she was carrying heavy buckets, cleaning, cooking, and also in the evening she had a small, so to speak, workout. It was so hard to get up that he let her rest and thought that if he could, he would do it himself, for he had done so much wrong, and it was a shame to make her do anything. The girl is watching him and doesn't know how to look him in the eyes after all that happened between them, afraid that the guy won't take her seriously and will think that she is so frivolous towards everyone she has met in her life. She really doesn't want that, especially since they're not dating and friends can't have anything like what happened yesterday. She had gotten to know him a little better in a few days than she had on the street, never guessing that fate would bring them together again, and so quickly, Gaydon a little sullen but caring, intimidating but at the same time able to make her feel at ease. Despite the fact that everything started and continues so well, the girl remembers not to open her heart thoughtlessly, even though she has no doubts about it. She's so scared of being fooled again that she doesn't want to finalize any mistakes and risk her future. Before she can trust him completely, she needs to get to know him better. And that takes time, a lot of time. After a little thought and rest, she still went to work and did not let him do what she had promised. She began to cook a new soup, which he had never tasted. She wanted to surprise him, and it was not interesting to cook something that had already been. There's a risk that if she gets lazy under the pretext of pain, he might kick her out. Although she just thinks that's what he'd do to her. He certainly wouldn't do that to her. Lately, it has manifested itself, for not badly, both in household and in some other things. Without it, he will be obviously worse and more difficult. Gaydon saw her with that huge pot again, afraid that the girl might burn herself. Or worse, strain her back. He first stopped her beside him, took her by the waist, and reminded her that he had asked her not to lift weights. Lily might not feel it now, but in a few years, her back would make itself known. Judging by the aroma, everything was already cooked. He asked her to take a seat at the table and told her he'd finish it all himself. Lily notices that he's strange today, not as confident as usual, as if he's hiding something. She thought it was just a passing thought and tried to ignore it. Because if he didn't like it or something happened, he'd say it right away and he wouldn't keep quiet. But in the meantime, and yes, it's on the table, there was an awkward silence, Gaydon pretending to be very hungry, when in fact he was preparing a speech. He's trying so hard to keep a calm expression on his face that she's getting alarmed. It's very obvious, and she can barely contain herself from asking, "What's the matter?" At the same time, the soup smells so good that it's impossible to think of anything else. The girl takes a spoon and decides that all business is for later. Now she's having breakfast. Just as she begins to taste the soup, images of last night pop up that will probably stay with her for the rest of her life, because it was too wonderful. It's rare for a first experience to leave such fond memories. It's usually much sadder for others. Lily tries to understand, but nothing works out. Like, everything is fine, she has a good job, she doesn't sleep on the street, she fell in love with a handsome guy. Her parents haven't found her, but inside something doesn't give her peace. If her body tells her that she is waiting for unpleasant news, although it is not a fact, she may be very happy, especially when she finds out that he is ready to create a family and is not going to throw her out. The girl thought about it so hard she even put her bowl away. She had lost her appetite, but the Gaydon wouldn't leave her hungry. When he again ordered her to eat at least 2 portions, she pretended that it was a great deal, though she was not averse to the. Lily can't do anything about her habit of refusing to eat even when she's really hungry. She never ceases to wonder what a good man he is, and if she had walked past that house on that first day, she would have lost a lot and not been alive. The guy doesn't kick out an unexpected guest, but also treats him well, like a sister or a very close person. Now, they'll definitely become them. Though she doesn't know it yet, the girl is quietly eating the soup, but for some reason, the guy still hasn't told her anything. I wonder when he'll find the right time to do it, because the sooner he does, the better for each of them. Sooner or later, the girl will find out how long he hid it from her and will be very pleased. So it is better not to postpone this matter and talk at least until the beginning of the evening. It was time to wash the dishes. And how good it was that during the time of living with her parents, the girl had learned to use the dishes sparingly, so that she would not have to rewash a lot later on. There's literally a couple bowls, spoons, and 1 pot, although it could be a lot more, and I'd have to stay in the kitchen for at least a couple hours. First, you have to get water as usual, but this time he wouldn't let her in. He said it was very cold and he'd bring it all himself. It's very right of him not to let girls carry heavy things, and now even more so. Even though they haven't gone to the doctor and don't even know if she's going to get pregnant after yesterday or not, Gaydon isn't relaxing and has already even accepted the fact that she is. He won't get upset, and if it turns out that everything is fine and it didn't work out, he'll just be more considerate and apologize for the situation. Because of all these thoughts and worries, the guy seems a little nervous, but it's not true. He just doesn't know how best to start a conversation, especially at what point in time. Is starting to be as cold as the first day and mistakenly thought I did something wrong, or maybe he might not have liked something yesterday. In the end, he asked her to stay home, not to go out, and if she got sick again, he would have to take her to the doctor and keep her in the hospital for a while. Gaydon is just being intimidating, but she took it seriously and even got a little upset. She wanted to see a nice guy. He's kind of not what she expected. A whole day's worth of work had piled up in the house, a whole basket of dirty laundry to be re-washed, dusting to be done, and preferably the floors to be mopped. She had somehow forgotten about them from the first day she had been here. There was no hurry. Lily sat down quietly by the fireplace, thought about what had happened to her recently, and caught herself thinking that she had no idea what to do next. In principle, she is very good with him, comfortable, much better than with her parents, but she also wants to get out into the city. You don't even have to ask. He hardly wants the same thing. And if he falls in love with her, he'll do anything to keep her here with him, and he won't let her go anywhere. The guy was already back in the house, had gotten a lot of water, and just at that moment, the girl was ready to work on the house. She noticed that once he shows up, she can't sit idle. Something makes her rise up and do some good. It's just another childhood habit that will stay with her for the rest of her life, and there's nothing you can do about it. After a while, she needed some kind of needle. Lily doesn't know what's where and asked him if there's anything like it. She needs to hem old clothes. She wants to give them a second life. It's a pity to throw them away, and it's not right to leave them like that. They will not want to wear. They will be dusty in the closet and only take up space, especially since she is not bad embroidery and will cope with it at once and twice. The guy warned that he wasn't forcing her to do it, and if she wanted to stitch something up herself, that was fine with him. The main thing is that she doesn't do anything she doesn't want to do, and doesn't try to think of things to do just to avoid sitting in one place. Although that's actually what she's doing, she's just afraid to come clean and tell the truth. It's easier for her that way than to feel like she's done less than she could have done. At first, Gaydon looked at her and thought that Lily was just trying to please him, and that's why she was always doing something. But apparently, she just really likes cleanliness, and when she sees something out of place, she immediately folds it or fixes it up. Considering all the things he had planned in case the girl got pregnant, such skills would not be superfluous. This house would definitely have a good hostess, and they would at least not live a single day in a mess. When she had sewed up all the clothes, noticed that there were small holes in the towels. While the threads were in hand, she hemmed everything that needed to be. Most things now look good, and you won't have to spend money to buy new. Instead, you can buy food or stock up on firewood for next winter. Meanwhile, while the sun was still up, Gaydon decided to go outside and shovel the snow. He didn't do that yesterday, so there's definitely no rest today. I'll have to do double duty, and the girl will be at dinner and ready for him when he gets back, as usual. Although he did not show it in the house, as soon as he went outside, he began to think why she tries so hard to please him. Although he does not insist on anything, it is enough for him that she cooks delicious food. You don't have to tidy up every day, wash or sew things as soon as they're thrown in the hamper, and scrub the floors every night, because that's too much. It was a little strange. But today, Lily was tired much earlier than usual. This had never happened before, and she hadn't even done everything she had planned to do. She is still insanely afraid that if the owner comes in and sees her idle, he will, like Mom, punish her and yell at the whole house. Even though she realizes that it will never happen, the habit from her childhood has remained and is very much ruining her life even now, when her parents are not even close to her. When you think of all the things she used to do, just the thought of it would make you dizzy. There was so much work to do at her parents' house that she never once had time to do everything she was asked to do. Not only that, her parents purposely threw everything on the floor on purpose, and my brother and sister never cleaned the table and left it to her. You had to cook for 5, although there was a cook who got paid for nothing. She was the only one replacing all the assistants. They just came to them and did nothing. Lily got so little for it that sometimes she didn't even care about the money. It was much more valuable to rest in peace and not to hear those screams that made my head explode and spoiled my mood for the whole day. As strange as it sounds, she's even curious to see what they've had going on in the meantime, how they live, and most importantly, if they've even tried to find her at all. She's been gone for over 5 days, which is a long time, but in their case, they probably don't care. She's gone. And also, since the guy doesn't know what kind of family she's from, when he was at the market, he heard the news that someone's house had burned down and a family of 4 was left on the street. From the description, It sounds a lot like what she thought. And even after all the way they treated her, she started to hope they were doing well. A girl of amazing kindness. She is always happy to help those who shouldn't and is able to forgive what others fail to do. She doesn't want anyone to feel everything she's experienced in her life. Hunger, fear, hatred, all that hell. And it's probably the first and only time in the whole capital that Lily has ever even thought about getting revenge on someone. She wanted to leave them quietly, to forget their life together as a terrible dream. Although she realizes that any other person in her place, she had to set herself a goal to take revenge on them and everyone who laughed and hurt her. The girl doesn't understand how she has so much love for these people. She doesn't have an ounce of hate even after they openly called her a waste of space. If she had the time, she'd think about the past nonstop for days on end. But Lily isn't alone, and you have to remember to take time for more than just yourself. Gaydon walks into the house and says the snowfall hasn't stopped. Usually it lasts a few hours, but this time it's like never before. The guy loves snow, but when he has to shovel it, it's not the nicest thing he could be doing at the time. Even now, when it meant nothing, he just told what was going on outside, and the girl thought he was asking for help. She was ready to go outside, to pick up a shovel, when suddenly she forgot that she was in tears and he mustn't see it. Even a few meters away, you can see very clearly that she is wiping her tears, and her face is very red. Gaydon didn't stay silent and said that if need be, he can support her. Again, he doesn't know her situation and mistakenly thought she was just tired and really wanted to go home, and when he said for snow, thought it might have ruined her mood. He explained that the snow would pass, that she shouldn't worry so much, and that she would be able to return to the village in a week. But Lily remained silent. She didn't know whether she should tell him or wait a little longer. Suddenly, everything would be easier later, and she would explain everything without problems, without tears and emotions. The girl quickly calmed down and asked to talk about it later. She's not ready for that now, because you can spend time making a dinner she hasn't even started. Everyone is hungry. This time we need to come up with something very quick. And of course, to make it as tasty as last time. The snow has covered all the roads. They can't even go outside for a walk and get some fresh air. Though he was there just now, the girl was tired of sitting at home and wouldn't mind walking in the snow. She likes the way it crunches under her feet, and even more she likes walking where there isn't a single footprint to put it first. Meanwhile, she still couldn't stop crying. The girl calmed down and the tears appearing on their own. She has no control over them, and it makes you want to be sad even more. She's kind of depressed. She doesn't think about anything. She takes everything personally, and it just gets worse. Gaydon is having a really hard time reacting to this. He doesn't know what happened, and thinks he probably has no right to pry unless she wants to tell him everything herself. He's just trying to be reassuring. He wants a hug, and that's the best he can do at the moment. And then the guy realized he'd never even considered what to do if a girl was crying. Without understanding the situation, he begins to think that everything is because of him. He somehow offended, did something wrong, maybe accidentally pushed, thought anything but the right thing. She's been crying for a long time. She won't stop. She's overcome with emotion, and then he realizes that something has to be done about it. It's evening outside, and if she cries until night, she won't be able to sleep. She doesn't even sit on the bed. She sits on the floor, covers her face with her hands, and doesn't say anything. It's quite normal, but it's unusual for him and the only thing he's come up with. Take her in his arms and drag her over to the bed so it's not so uncomfortable to sit. He gets nervous himself and doesn't even know how she affected him like that. He doesn't want to make things worse, but at the same time, he can't go out on the street either. It would be ugly and wrong of him. He was used to her shaking, but he wasn't ready for this. She wouldn't even tell him what to do and just cried like a little baby. Gaydon was about to leave when suddenly, Lily opens her eyes and seems to have calmed down a bit. She starts to ask different questions, but her speech is so slurred that it's hard to understand anything. He asked her to calm down. Otherwise, he had to calm her down with his own methods, if, of course, she understood what that meant. Eventually, some time passes, they lay together on the bed, and the girl starts to fall asleep. She shakes a little, but not as much as she did then. The guy thought that if he couldn't go anywhere, why not rest with her? Especially since he was very tired and all the planned things had already been done. Some time has passed. The girl is asleep, unsuspecting he casually touches her tender leg. And then he couldn't stop himself. Gaiden not only didn't wake her up, he started acting without her permission. Lily thinks he's just stroking her like he did yesterday. But that's just the beginning, and really, it doesn't end there. The girl wakes up, immediately realizes everything, and surprisingly doesn't even think of stopping him. She doesn't mind at all, and has asked him to do this more often.